Hello everyone, and welcome back to the A320 Pro channel. Today, we will have an in-depth look at how the ILS Approach works on the Airbus A320 using the brand new Fenix A320 Block 2. This tutorial video will be divided into 3 sections. Section 1, the little hat method, used to set up the approach in the MCDU systematically. Section 2, the approach profile recommendations by Airbus, including speeds and management of the guidance modes in order to fly the ILS safely and efficiently. Finally, Section 3 will then fly the ILS to runway 24 right into Montreal Trudeau Airport down to landing. We will also be discussing and demonstrating the approach flow and checklist, as well as the landing flow and checklist. Ready? Let's dive into it and make you fly the ILS like we do in real life on the A320. We are now in cruise on our beautiful Fenix A320, and we're going to start setting up for the approach. In real life, we usually start setting up about 30 minutes before top of descent. In that scenario, we can see top of descent is in only about 70 miles. This is only for the purpose of the video that I'm doing this quite late. Okay, the first step to setting up the approach will be to get the weather. There are 2 ways you can do this. We can use the ATSU menu going into the MCDU, ATSU, AOC menu, weather request. I'm going to type in the airport I want the weather at, CYUL, and press yes on METAR and send. That is going to send back to me the actual weather in Montreal live. I'm using a different weather, so this is not really going to match what we're going to have on land. This is one way to do it. The other way would be to retrieve the ATIS frequency on your chart. In this case, the ATIS in Montreal is 133.7. You listen to it and write it down. Now we're going to listen to it and pretend the ATIS is this.
Montreal Trudeau International Airport. Weather information Alpha at 1800 Zulu. Winds 260 degrees at 10 knots. Visibility 2 miles. Light rain, mist. Overcast clouds 300 feet. Temperature 10, dew point 10. QNH 2968 inches. Approach in use is the ILS, Category 1 to runway 24 right. Runway is wet. From ATC, you have information Alpha.
Okay, so now we have the ATIS. The PF is going to take care of setting up the MCDU for the approach and doing the performance calculation. So first I'm going to transfer controls to the PM as I do so. First step, we'll be looking at the ECAM, pressing on the status page. Status is normal. This is going to remind us if there is any performance penalty that we need to take into account for our performance. We're now going to go into the iPad and we're going to use the arrival perf, and this has been very neatly done by the Fenix team to resemble the app that we use in real life. So I'm going to type in the airport we're going to, runway that we're going to use, 24 right. It's a wet runway, so we're going to use RCC 5. I'm going to insert the weather. Winds are 260 at 10. The temperature, 10 degrees. And the altimeter setting, 2968. Now, if you're using the actual live weather, you can just apply the METAR. In this case, we can. At the bottom here, we have the aircraft configuration. Low auto brake is going to be sufficient for today. We're going to use the idle, no reverse. Although we're going to use reverse in real life, or even in the sim. We always use the idle reverse for performance. Manual landing, I'm going to land manually. Flap full, we can also do flap 3, but in this case we'll do flap 4, and auto thrust on. The only thing we're missing now is the landing weight, and we'll need to do a little bit of math in the MCDU for this. I'm going to go into fuel prediction. Have a look at your gross weight. Currently your airplane weighs 54.5 tons. We currently have 2.7 tons of fuel on board, and we're going to land with 2.1 ton. So the difference is going to be a difference of 0.6 tons in terms of the fuel that we have now versus the fuel on landing. So if we subtract 0.6 tons to our gross weight, that is going to be our landing weight. So in that case, 54.5 minus 0.6 tons, that's going to bring us at 53.9. So I'm going to go ahead in the app and insert that at 53.9. We now have our landing distance, stop margin of 6,168 feet. That is our landing distance. That is more than sufficient. Okay, we can go back now. We have our performance calculation done to the MCDU, and we're going to start doing the little hat method which is a way to systematically set up the MCDU for any approach. I'm going to start in flight plan, and I'm going to have a look on the arrival airport, selecting arrival. We can then select the arrival that we want to fly. In this case, I have selected the ILS-24 right during my flight preparation. We then have the Carter 4 RNAV arrival that we have selected here. P-bird transition. If you look on the plate, this is actually the only transition for this approach. Approach via. This star is an open star, so there is no approach vias that we can select. We're going to have to be vectored by ATC. So it looks good to me. Flight plan is done in that case. We can also go ahead and look with the plan view and zoom of 80, for instance, and we can then have a look at all our restrictions on our arrival to make sure that the procedure that has been retrieved from the database is actually up to date with the plane. In this case, I'm going to skip that. I'm going to assume it's good. Then I have RenNav. There's not much to do here. The Airbus auto-tunes for you all the frequencies that you need. You can see here the India Zulu Zulu ILS frequency. We have the Montreal VOR. I'm just going to force the Montreal VOR on the VOR number 2 and select VOR number 2. In case of the missed approach, if we lose the GPS capability of the aircraft, at least we can use raw data to unflight the missed approach. Proc page, we're going to insert the airport that we're flying to. So Montreal, runway 24 right. This is going to give us the distance to the threshold and the bearing as well. Very useful information as we're approaching for landing. Then going to go into the perf page. I'm going to go into the descent page. Here we have the transition speed. So basically, as we're descending, we're going to maintain a constant Mach number. To do so, the airplane is going to accelerate in terms of indicated airspeed. Sometimes ATC can give us a transition speed. For instance, Air Canada 689 transition speed 310 knots. In that case, I would go ahead and insert 310 knots. Basically, the airplane will maintain Mach 0.78 until it reaches a speed of 310 knots indicated. When it does so, it will transition to maintain a speed of 310 knots. Next phase, we can insert our landing data. So we have the weather information. 268, 10 degrees, winds are 260 at 10. Transition flight level is flight level 180. This is a standard. Landing configuration, we have selected full or landing flaps full. If you were landing flaps 3, we would select configuration 3. And finally, barrel is for any ILS category 1. This will be using minimums as a barometric altitude, so the altitude you read off the altimeter. Radio would be for ILS category 2 or category 3, and those would be minimums that is read off the radar altimeter. We use barrel and insert the minimums, in this case 310. Next phase, I'm going to change those numbers right now, and as I do so, I'm going to explain what I'm doing. So first of all, this is for the go around. In case of go around, we'll reduce the thrust to climb thrust at 1602 feet, but we will only accelerate to 250 knots starting at 3000 feet. This is very convenient because as you're doing the go around, there will be plenty of things happening. You don't want to have to deal with retracting the flaps and cleaning up the aircraft. This will give you plenty of time to just focus on flying the missed approach. Airbus says this number can be anything as long as it is at least the MOCA, the minimum obstacle clearance altitude, or the missed approach altitude in this case. Engine out acceleration altitude is exactly the same. This is at what altitude will accelerate in case of an engine out. This also has to be the MOCA or the missed approach altitude, whichever you prefer. Okay, we're then going to go into fuel prediction. The only thing I'm going to look at here is the extra time. We have 0.2 tons of extra, that's 7 minutes. So if we need to hold, or if we need to be on delayed vectors or anything like that, we know we have about 2.2 tons of extra fuel that we can burn. That is not much. And then finally, secondary flight plan. I can copy the active, and I can also change if I plan on having a different arrival to Montreal. For instance, the ILS-24 left. I can load that directly into the FMS. I can also load the performance in case I want to activate this secondary flight plan. In that case, it's already set. I'll just set the barrel minimums to 320 for the ILS-24 left. And we're all set up. And the last thing we need to do before we start descending very soon is to set our auto brake to low. We're now finally all set up. And that is the little hat method into the MCDU to set up everything for the approach. Now since I'm done setting up, I'll take controls again from the PM, so I have controls. And this is the time where we're going to start briefing the approach. Now this will be fully covered in another video, so stay tuned for that. Okay, so before we fly the approach together, I want to discuss about the profile and energy management on the Airbus A320. Let's have a look together at Airbus recommendations for what speeds and configuration we should target during the approach. So as we're descending, we're going to pass through 10,000 feet, right about this area on the Carter 5 RNAV arrival into Montreal Trudeau. The airplane will automatically slow down to maintain a speed of 250 knots, which is the international standard speed restriction. In terms of management of the energy, the next time the airplane will slow down is to respect any speed constraints that we have in MCDU. In this case, we have one at Seldo, max 210 knots, and at Cardo, max 210 knots. So there will be a pseudo waypoint in the MCDU, right about here, so just about a couple miles before Seldo, to allow the airplane to start slowing down to 210 knots. If there's a speed restriction on your star, this usually actually leads to the airplane activating the approach phase and slowing down to green dot speed. If this doesn't happen, you can also do it manually by going into the perf page in the MCDU and activate approach phase. This will allow, of course, only if you're in managed speed mode, the airplane to start slowing down to green dot speed, and subsequently once you extend the flaps to S, F, and REF speed. In that case, I always aim to be at green dot speed by the end of the downwind. This of course depends on whether the ATC is going to turn you early or turn you late, depending on traffic situations. Once ATC gives you a left turn, this will be in this case, a left turn for the base turn for the ILS 24 right into Montreal. This is a good point where we can start applying flaps 1. And looking on the right, applying the Airbus recommendations. Once you're at green dot speed, flaps 1. The airplane will start slowing down to S speed, which is your slat extended minimum speed. Automatically, this is automatically once again if you're in managed speed mode. Well, they're going to be cleared on this heading to intercept the ILS. Once we intercept the ILS and the glide slope comes live, once the glide slope is 1 dot above us, so we're 1 dot below the glide slope, we can apply flaps 2. Once flaps 2 are applied, the airplane will start descending onto glide slope by having glide slope star. When that is the case, we can extend the landing gear. This should roughly coincide with the 2,500 feet call from the radio altimeter. Once the landing gear is extended and we are on flaps 2, the airplane will start slowing down to F speed. When we're below VFE next, we can then apply flaps 3, and below VFE next again, flaps 4. Usually this will coincide by being fully configured just a little bit before the FAF. In this case, the FAF would be about here on the ILS 24 right into Montreal. In any case, we need to be in landing configuration, so that is gear down and flaps full, or flaps 3 if you're doing a flaps 3 landing, and the approach stabilized by 1050 AGL. Once again, the approach stabilized approach criterias mean we're established on a glide slope, on a localizer, the airplane is at REF speed, we are with the engines spooled up, and we are fully configured for landing. And there you are. You have your full energy management. Now, of course, this will change depending on the conditions. Sometimes ATC will bring you further out. In this case, you don't need to slow down too early. Or sometimes ATC might turn you a little bit tighter in. In this case, it's a good idea to slow down earlier. This will all depend on the traffic situations. It's your job to look at the TCAS on your ND and see if there is any traffic ahead of you, listen to the frequency, and adjust your speed accordingly. All right, I think you now have all the tools that you need in order to fly the ILS like a pro. Let's dive into it. Now very soon we're going to start descending. One thing I want to show you on the PFT first of all, on the ND. Top of descent is in exactly 10 miles. We can use the rings here. We're using a range of 40, so this is 40, 30, 20, and 10. We can also have a better look exactly where top of descent is. In the flight plan page, you can see top of descent is at 1906. It's currently 1905, so it's in 1 minute. It's a distance of 8 miles. We can also see in performance, we can have a look here to top of descent, 7 miles, reaching at 1906. Now usually in real life, we start descending about 5 miles before the top of descent, just to ensure that the airplane starts descending smoothly and then captures the VNAV. In case, let's pretend ATC tells us that we can start descending to an altitude of 15,000 feet. I'm going to go ahead and select 15,000 feet, 5,000 feet blue, and I'm going to use the managed to start descending into descent. Descending in managed means that the airplane will actually follow all the restrictions on the star. If you start descending in open descent, the airplane will just go thrust idle, pitch to maintain whatever speed you want to maintain, and will bypass all the restrictions of the approach. One thing I want to look at on the ND once again is this little zigzagging arrow in blue. This simply means that currently we're sitting below VNAV. That's normal. We've started descending a bit before. Descending at 1,000 feet per minute, because the VNAV is coming back. So this simply signifies where the airplane is going to catch back the vertical profile. There we go. We're at the edge of the cliff, and we're starting up descent on the VNAV. You can see in that case that the airplane has commanded thrust idle, and we can read that off the FMA at the top here. Now one thing I want to look at too on the PFD now is the airspeed brackets. You can see here we have our target speed, and we have then in bracket 20 knots less than the target speed and 5 knots more. This simply means that the airplane will, in this case, go thrust idle and maintain with the pitch within these brackets. Currently, as we can see, the VNAV is going below us because the airplane is struggling to maintain the speed within the brackets as the airplane is descending. And the airplane is telling you more drag, and this is also going to be in the scratch pad of the MCDU. So in that case, I'm going to go ahead and use some speed brakes. I'm going to go full because it's quite below us. If you want to know exactly how far above or below the VNAV you are, you can go in the perf page and correction on the proc page, and it's going to tell you the VDEV vertical deviation, and we're 1,700 feet too high compared to our vertical profile. So we're definitely going to need that. Now using the speed brakes, we can see that the airplane is now able to descend almost at 4,000 feet a minute, which is going to start bringing us back to where our VNAV. In that case, it's not working. The VNAV is slowly going away from us. It's increasing actually. What we can do to help, and this is the scenario I wanted to show you, is to pull the speed. So go in the selected speed and increase the speed, for instance to 300 knots. This is going to allow the airplane to descend much more steeply now. I believe that the speed here is a small malfunction of the Fenix A320. It's a Block 2 that I'm using right now. It's a brand new product, just came out yesterday, so there will be some glitches of course. It should not have slowed down as it did right now because we had selected a certain speed in that case. Interestingly enough, it's saying selected 250 here when it should say 300 because this is what I had selected previously. In that case, I cannot change it, so I'm just using selected speed to go back onto my VNAV. Now you see by going selected speed, once again the airplane is like, okay, I have a lot of energy I can use, so I can trade altitude for the energy. This is exactly what we're looking for because we're flying too high compared to the VNAV. Once again, zigzagging arrow, blue arrow on the ND. This is where we're going to reach back our profile. What I can do here, I can see I'm reaching back my profile, so I'm going to retract the speed brakes because I don't need those anymore. And the airplane will now slowly settle back down onto the VNAV. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like this new version is able to handle the speed management yet in descent. What I'm going to do is I'm going to maintain 300 knots because this was the assigned transition speed anyway. And once we reach close to 10,000 feet, I'll go back into managed speed. I'll set constraints on my selector here just to have all the different altitude and speed constraints appear on my ND. This is also part of the 10,000 feet flow, but I just want to have it in, right now, just to have a better visual reference at what I'm doing. Now we can see here that definitely with that speed of 300 knots, the airplane is fully capable of maintaining that VNAV at 2,400 feet per minute. And one thing I want to mention as well, once we pass 30,000 feet, this is depending on the SOPs of the company, of course, but usually at my company what we do is we go on PA and we say 25 minutes to landing, 25 minutes avant atterrissage. We're approaching our transition altitude, so anywhere above flight level 180 we are in the flight levels, below 180 we will be in the altitudes. Once we're approaching flight level 180, that is when we will transition from standard 2992 to whatever the altimeter setting is at our destination airport. In that case, this will be provided by ATC, or you can use the one that you have had on your ADIS. We'll switch now, so transition, set altimeter 2968. The PM, or the first officer, also sets the altimeter setting to 2968, and usually this is the captain's job. The captain will go and set 2968 on the ISIS as well. The next few steps, once we approach 10,000 feet, we'll do the approach flow and approach checklist. Also make sure that you have a look at the airplane, what it does, and that it's actually following the different restrictions on your approach. One thing I want to look at on the ND is this little magenta dot that we have just after F dot. This is simply signifying it's a pseudo waypoint, so this means that the airplane will start slowing down at this point. And if we look in the MCDU, it is actually this waypoint right here, limitation. It says that at 1916, so that's in 4 minutes, it will go from a speed of 302 knots to a speed of 250 knots, and that is to abide by the international standard of a maximum speed of 250 knots below 10,000 feet. Now let's say we're cleared back down, so I'm going to go back here, back at managed, and ATC tells us that we're cleared all the way down to 3,000 feet. We just heard that tick 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 triple click. This is simply because the airplane was just about to level off at 5,000 feet. So since that changed the altitude on the FCU, the airplane is just making sure that you know what you're doing. So it transfers you back into open descent, but I have right away put it back into managed or descent mode, managed descent. We're now a little bit above our glide slope, our VNAV. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back to managed speed, and I'm going to help the aircraft slow down and descend. Now remember, as you're flying a heavy jet aircraft, you can't really do both at the same time. It's either you descend or you slow down. In this case, we're slowing down, but we're not descending much because we have to trade all that energy first before we can start going back down. Once again, how can we check how far off the VNAV we are? Go in prog page and have a look here. We're 1,500 feet above the VNAV. That is not too bad. We're going to catch it back soon. I'm going to keep the speed brakes extended. Now, just for the simplicity of the video, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do the approach flow. This is usually done closer to 10,000 feet, but I'm going to have some things to talk about close to 10,000 feet, so I'll get that out of the way. So then by the PM, so the PM will go ahead and select the landing lights on. We'll then go ahead and select constraints. We're flying an ILS, so we have to select LS. This is landing system push button. I just want to show you right now what it does. Once I've pressed LS, we can now see on the PFD that we have the indication for the localizer right here. The glide slope will be right here. It's not shown yet. And we also have the identifier for the ILS frequency right here. I'm going to retract the speed brakes because we're now back on our VNAV. In this case, it also matches what we should have for the LS2 for right. India Zulu Zulu on 111.9. We've passed the pseudo waypoint, and that this when the Fenix actually fix this issue, this is where you would start slowing down to a speed of 250 knots to make sure that you pass 10,000 feet at a speed of 250 knots. Finally, we've almost done with the flow. We're just going to check that we have the engine mode selector on norm. We also set it to ignition start in case we expect some heavy rain on landing, for instance. And we're going to read the approach checklist. So the PM will read approach checklist, bearer ref. So you announce it, bearer ref is QNH 2.68 inches set. Seatbelts are on. Minimum, barrel 310. Auto brake, low. And engine mode selector, norm. Approach checklist is completed. Now, newer aircraft models, when you set the auto brake, to low or medium for landing, this will actually display on the PFD low auto brake. In this case, this is an older model of the Airbus A320, so we don't have this indication on the PFD. Okay, so let's have a look at our situation here. We're just about to start turning into a long downwind for the ILS 249. We're clear down to 3,000 feet. We're less than 10,000 feet, so we're below 250 knots. In that case, we're exactly 250 knots. We're fully set up for the approach. Having a look at the temperature here, temperature outside is plus 4 degrees. I see they have some clouds out here. Airbus recommendations or Airbus guidance is that whenever it's 10 degrees or less and you're going to fly into visible moisture such as mist, haze, clouds, rain, snow, we should have the engine anti-ice on. So in this case we're going to fly in this little layer of cloud and it's plus 5 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and select the engine 1 and 2 anti-ice on. This should be on by the way. Now we're going to keep this extremely standard. I'm not going to have any speed restriction. I'm not going to have any traffic ahead of me. It's going to be extremely standard. Once we are close to Umval, we'll turn for a base, pretending that ATC gives us some vectors. They will then intercept the ILS and fly it all the way down to landing. Still 7 degrees, so we're still going to keep that engine anti-ice on. Now we have one more symbology I want to talk about on the ND. It's this waypoint here, the D, magenta D with a circle around it. This is your deceleration waypoint. It simply means that this is where the airplane will start slowing down in order to make this restriction of 210 knots at Sildo. Coincidentally, this is also going to be where the aircraft actually goes into the approach phase, and it will start slowing down automatically provided that you are in match speed toward green dot speed. Subsequently towards SF and REF speed as you extend the flaps. And the airplane is telling us more drag. It's showing us that we're going to catch back the VNAV right about here. In that case, the more drag is gone. As mentioned before, we want to be, if there were no speed restrictions and ATC didn't give us any restriction, we want to make sure that we are at green dot speed by, I would say by about here, because the ATC could turn us toward the ILS at any time really, starting from here. So if you don't have a deceleration waypoint and you want the airplane in managed speed to go toward green dot, you go in perf, activate approach phase, and the airplane will slow down. Okay, it's 11 degrees, we're in the clouds, but 11 degrees, we don't need the engine anti-ice, so it goes off. There we go, we've passed the deceleration waypoint. You can now see that the airplane is starting to slow down. It's showing 128 at the bottom, but it's actually going to stop the deceleration at green dot speed. Now here we can see that the VNAV is keeping us at 500 feet per minute, which is quite low descent rates. ATC would probably not really like that. By the way, here's green dot at 196 knots. So if ATC doesn't like that, or if you just want to have a better rate of descent, we can just go ahead and select. There we go. If I can actually select it, it's a bit finicky. There we go. A higher descent rate, for instance, 600 feet per minute. I'm going to verbalize it, VS minus 600 feet per minute. We're going to leave that VNAV, and then we're now managing our descent using VS. And we've passed that restriction of Sildo 210 knots and of less than 4,000 feet. And Kurdu at max 210 knots as well, between 3 and 4,000 feet, going down at 3,000 feet. So this is all going well so far. What I'm going to plan to do is just after here, I'm going to turn to a base. Once again, this would be a vector given by the ATC. And once we're about here, I'll select flaps 1 to start slowing down to S speed. One last thing before we fly this approach. Once we're given the vector toward the intercept, we'll go in the FMS and do the radioing. Okay, so I'm not turning to the downwind termination waypoint. I'm going to go ahead and pretend ATC gives us a left turn. heading 330. So we go into heading, full heading, heading 330.
Cabin crew must now be
I'm going to be in the FMS. I'm going to go into direct to. I'm going to answer to the person later. I'm going to select low now. This is the intermediate fix. Select radial in. This has to be the reciprocal of your approach course. So approach course is 236. So we're going to select radial in 056. I'm going to do direct to insert. Now have a look on the PFD. It now says nav blue. So the airplane is going to start turning now. So I have to make sure I go back into heading. There we go. And now we have that straight line going all the way to the runway, and we have sequenced the flight plan. We'll answer to her. She's going to tell me the cabin is ready.
The cabin is now secure for landing.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to reset it so it stops blinking. Here we are. Okay. We're getting closer. I'm going to select flaps 1. Speed check. We're below VFE next. Flaps 1. The airplane is now going to slow down automatically toward S speed. Usually this is where TC would tell you to turn. And let's say heading 300 to intercept the ILS. Runway 24 right. So once you're cleared the approach, depending if you're cleared the approach, you can select approach. If you're cleared to intercept the localizer only, press on localizer. In this case, we are cleared to intercept the approach, so I'm going to go and press approach and AP2 as well. Let's have a look at the FMA and read what it says. Glide slope blue, Loc star, so Loc star means we're intercepting the localizer. Cat 3 dual, AP1 plus 2. Now we're only doing a Cat 1. This PFD here indication, Cat 3 dual, is only telling you that the airplane, currently as it stands with its system performance, is capable of doing a Cat 3 approach. We usually use both autopilots coupled, as it's called, to actually achieve this level of service, even though we're only doing a Cat 1 approach. Another thing I want to note is on the ND, we can see here that little blue arrow. This simply shows where the glide slope is going to come alive. Loc, so this means that the airplane is now established and tracking the localizer. We're still glide slope blue, so it means that the glide slope is armed, but not active yet. That makes sense. The glide slope is currently armed. So the glide slope is at about 1 dot from us. We're going to go ahead and select flaps 2. Now usually there's a speed restriction. In real life, they usually, for every ILS approach I've ever done, give us a speed restriction of 160 to the FAF. In this case, Rolex. So you would select speed selected 160 or whatever speed you're given. In this case, I'm just going to let the airplane slow down. We're going to pretend there's absolutely no restriction given by ATC. Okay, so now we're about 1 dot. I'm going to go ahead and select flaps 2, speed check, flaps 2. Airplane will now slow down to F speed. Just as we're about to go off the edge here, glide slope star, go around altitude, 3,000 feet set. So just as we go off the edge, this is where we put flaps 2, because as we descend, we're now going to start picking up some energy, so it's going to be slower at slowing down the airplane. I'm going to do on the FMS as well is select prog page because I can see how far off I am from my VNAV if it's in the an RNAV approach, and how far off the threshold I am, in this case 8.4 nautical miles. Glide slope, we are established on the glide slope. You can see it on the FMA right here.
2,500.
2,500, this is a good time where you can start bringing the gear down, so we're going to call for gear down. And the PM is a quick flow, arm the spoilers, or speed brakes, and select the lights, so runway turnoffs and nose line. We have 3 greens, 2,200 feet. I'm going to go ahead and select flaps 3, speed check, flaps 3. We're still flying F speed, and right away flaps full, speed checked. Flaps full. We're now going to start slowing down to our VAP, which we have calculated on our side and in the FMGC. And we're going to call for the landing checklist. So landing checklist, go around altitude, 3,000 feet set, and ECAM memo, landing on blue. If we have a look at the ECAM memo, it actually, if there's anything that is not done, it will appear in blue on the ECAM. Landing checklist is complete. So we're now fully established on our ILS, on a glide slope, on a localizer. We're using the autopilot for now. We're in landing configuration with flaps full. The auto brakes are selected. Landing gear has been set down. The only thing we're missing now is our landing clearance, if we haven't had it yet. That's pretty much it. As we pass Volax, the PM will call Volax and call the altitude 1520. This is exactly the altitude we're supposed to pass Volax at. This is just a quick reminder for the other pilots and yourself as well. So have a look on the approach plate and make sure that we're passing Volax at around right altitude and we're not following a false glide slope. Check. You can see now on the ND it says T only. The airplane does not give you RA below 1,000 feet HEL. We have the landing inhibit as well. A couple of the enunciations are inhibited below 1,000 feet. 500 feet, stable, continue. Still onto the runway. Land.
300. 100 above.
Okay, check. We're still waiting for visual contact.
200. Minimum.
Okay, minimum. We have the runway lights. Continue. Disengaging autopilot. Count 1.
100. 50. 40. 30. 20. Retard. 5.
Touchdown. Go into reverse. I'm going to try to show you. It's going to be a bit complicated. Spoilers. Reverse green. And decel. Anything that's out of line. 70 knots. Go to idle reverse. And then manual braking. And we can now let the airplane roll all the way to the next exit. Exit the runway. And do after landing flow. For the purpose of the video, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to set the parking brake. There we go. And there you have it. You have the whole procedure from cruise, setting up for the ILS approach, all the way to flying the star, flying the approach, and landing the aircraft. Welcome to a rainy Montreal. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Many more videos will come very soon. In the meantime, I wish you a great day and have fun practicing the ILS on the beautiful Fenix A320.